Everyone, this is Cassie, and I'm here to talk through assignment 1, part B and C with you, which will be follow up to our soundscape that you're working on currently. To get us started, I'm just going to go ahead and be showing you some different screenshots from the actual assignment sheet, which I will be posting to D2L as soon as I post this video in our Facebook group. And so this is considering how we can prepare and teach small groups, especially for reading instruction. And I'll ask you to go ahead and read through this, but it's really important to emphasize that we're looking at both our students' funds of knowledge and considering how we can use that to design, organize, and differentiate instruction alongside of their different needs that they might have, where they need additional supports or if they need additional enrichment, as well as considering the interest of our students. And all of this is done to help to create a more comprehensive picture of our students and consider them more holistically as students. You can see here that we have a few big dates to be considering. For next Thursday, I'd like you to come in having had a conversation with your mentor teacher about how they assess students. From there, you'll select a group of 4 to 6 students for instruction for this particular assignment. And then bring in some draft objectives. Don't worry necessarily about assessments, as we'll be working on those together. But I'd like you to think about those assessments in light of the screencast that I assigned just before class last week and refer back to that as necessary. At the end of this month, before class, I'm going to ask you to share the following with both your mentor teacher and field instructor, which would be the small group lesson plan and assessments. I'll have you bring those to class because we'll be looking through those together and having a little bit of time to workshop so that in the following week you can actually teach. And then I'll ask you to be writing a 3-page reflection that will be due on October 13th. So looking more closely at how we're thinking about generating and analyzing student data, how we're going to gather information about who they are as learners, the things that we might want to prepare to teach, and actually preparing to teach those 3 lessons. We want to first learn about individual students as literacy learners. There's a variety of different prompts here for questions that you could be asking your mentor teacher to understand more about how they either have or continue to get to know the students in your class and in what ways you can support them in doing that. From there, you can also select a group of small students for instruction from those conversations. Again, thinking about, are these students who have a specific need or a specific interest or a specific commonality? It doesn't just have to be ability-based. And then from there, you're going to be looking at generating and analyzing information for your students' learning based on a common core state standard and how you can help students learn a particular strategy. And I'll, again, be sharing some more information and resources both on D2L and on our Facebook group with you to assist you in that. One thing I want to refer you back to, though, is the conversation we had during class last week about informal interviews that could be used. We talked about, based on the importance of getting to know our students, from Stephanie Jones, the following questions that you could be asking students, as well as I shared with you, the tool that I actually use in my own work, where I ask students to draw a self-portrait, include different elements about themselves and interests like basketball or reading, as well as the people that they're living with, and kind of the information about where they live. Another way that I want to refer back to last week's slides is that you're also going to be collecting anecdotal records. So once you have a conversation with your mentor teacher, it's important for you to actually observe the students in whatever area it is that you're going to be working with them on for reading instruction. Again, this is a very reading-focused lesson, as the unit that we'll be writing will be focused on writing. One of the things that we want to do as we think about using anecdotal records is that your mentor teachers are looking at a lot of students all at once very quickly, and I've had other students in the past who say, you know what, that student actually is doing something more than what the mentor teacher was able to see. And so it's important for you to be taking your own anecdotal records, which are something you'll be bringing to class to share with us on Thursday. So the second part, once we've gathered this information about our students, is to actually begin to write some lessons. And so for the purposes of this assignment, we're going to be using this particular format where you'll be choosing your Common Core standards, writing down your material needs as a teacher, as well as those for your students, and then thinking about any specific needs, thinking ahead to maybe some areas where your students would need additional support throughout the lesson. You'll see we're just going to do a quick lesson sketch of day 1, 2, and 3. You'll be bringing in draft objectives, and we'll be talking more specifically about assessments so that in the following week you'll really be able to focus on what it means to create instructional practices for these particular lessons. Remembering that we want to start from Common Core standards, move to objectives and assessments, we'll be creating student exemplars together in class next week. And then from there, you'll be developing these instructional practices so that we're not just going to Teachers Pay Teachers or going to Pinterest for something that's cute, but actually something that's really meaningful for our students. Finally, you're going to be asked to reflect on what it is that you've learned. So it's just 3 pages, double spaced, very quick. So after you've taught the 3 lessons, I'll ask you to write a narrative about that, but I want you to really describe for me more about what your classroom space is like for literacy learning. You can see I have a link there to this kind of cool app where you can play around and arrange some furniture. Otherwise, you can choose to include some photographs. Both of those things would be included in an appendix because D2L doesn't like us to upload very large materials. You'll also detail for me how your mentor teacher plans for literacy instruction, as well as how you do both formally and informally with assessments, and then how it is that you've gotten to know your students. So you might want to incorporate some of those interviews and the students' responses, or perhaps you want to include if they've drawn pictures, as I have, of course, using pseudonyms and other things for those students in particular. And then it's really important, too, in this narrative that you also identify any other resources or people in the building, like a reading specialist or maybe a bilingual coordinator that you can be reaching out to, as well as social workers and other people like that that maybe you used or your mentor teacher has used in getting to know students and being able to help them to develop into really strong literacy learners. So looking ahead again to next week, you'll be bringing in anecdotal records and that final part 1 or assignment 1 part A, which is that StoryMap.js screencast. Please email me or text me if you have any other questions about that. Anecdotal records that you'll be taking based on whatever area it is that you're going to be looking at for your students' reading instruction, and some draft objectives. Don't worry about the assessments. We'll be doing that again when we come into class. And then on the final thing that you need to do is that for the Facebook prompt, I'm going to need you to make sure that you comment with some sort of a connection to your internship class by Tuesday with maybe some of the things that you already know about your students and about their learning in the literacy areas of your classroom. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great weekend. I'm going to say go Notre Dame because I went there for my master's, but I'm sure that it'll be a great game that we'll watch today, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks, y'all.